Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. Predictions from a Ripple executive? Well, that sounds like yummy content. Take a look at this. Here's the headline from Tech Native. The Future of Finance, 2020 Predictions, written by, drumroll please, you don't have to do a drum, I don't care, Marcus Treacher, the SVP of Customer Success at Ripple. And I always think that's kind of a silly title. SVP of Customer Success. That reminds me, in my actual life, what I do I haven't gone too in depth, but I own my own company and I have for a decade now. And one of my vendors, I met the guy who was the CEO of his company, and he gave me his business card, and it said Chief Servant, and I just kind of like internally was rolling my eyes like, oh my god, that's hokey. Nothing personal, very nice guy, and I'm sure Marcus Treacher's, nothing against Marcus Treacher, I hope that goes without saying, but I always enjoy reading the things that he writes and seeing when in any videos where I've had the opportunity where he's speaking. Just a wealth of knowledge, obviously, very sharp guy, but I just think the title's kind of silly, But we're going to dig in here. But before going any further, if you would please delicately tap that like button, and if you're a fan of Ripple and XRP, and you want to know what these predictions are, that's the word that Marcus Treacher, Ripple employee, came up with. If you want to know what these predictions are, go ahead and subscribe to the Moon Lambo channel. Please? It's how I value my self-worth as a human being. All right, let's go ahead and dig in here. So I got this story from NBK Crypto, who tagged me along with some others in the community. So shout out to you, NBK Crypto. I do appreciate it. And take a look at this. I'm going to jump to the AMB Crypto piece here. Ripple enables SMEs receive international payments immediately, says exec. When we talk cross-border payments, the two names come to mind, Ripple and Swift. The two platforms can be very complementary and help speed up cross-border transactions, as Marjan Delatine, Ripple's head of global banking, suggested in an interview. Expanding on that, in a recent interview on Tech Native, Marcus Treacher, the SVP of Customer Success at Ripple, said that the trend of enabling customers to send and receive low-value payments in real time would accelerate in 2020 as customer demand for frictionless, on-demand payments continues to rise. And so, definitely worth pointing out here that this is it's kind of a big picture type of thing, something that doesn't happen by accident. The team at Ripple has been very well aware of this. Just think about the reason that you don't have low-value transactions, being sent around the world from one fiat currency to another. It's expensive. It's very expensive. There's a lot of middlemen that don't necessarily need to be there. A lot of human manual labor in terms of making sure the transaction goes from one spot to the next in the chain of bilateral banking relationships that makes up the correspondent banking system. It's just costly, frankly, very costly. And one of the neat things about all this, when you have the RippleNet specifically utilizing the messaging portion for payments, but also on-demand liquidity for settlement, you can dramatically reduce those costs. And then what happens when you do that? How does the market respond? People see that, and they're willing to send smaller, more frequent transactions, dollar amounts that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to in the past, because the dollar amounts eaten up by that would have been too substantial here. And then the piece continues here. Here we go. Keeping Ripple's payment system as a reference point, Treacher explained how the global economy would experience further growth of micro and wallet payments in the coming year, which would, in turn, enable instant and low-value payment flows. This is substantial, guys. Treacher also hinted that a payment system shift would occur in the future. Elaborating on the topic, he said, quote, "The shift from traditional large-value batch flows to low-value, high-volume payments will help SMEs, that's small medium enterprises, break into new markets much faster. SMEs are often young and fast-growing, which exposes them to cash flow crises through late payments from their larger foreign buyer." And then he added that the traditional and large-value batch flows would decline, while low value and high volume payments would be on the rise. And this, he said, would help the small and medium enterprises break into new markets much faster. And so, and this is kind of one of the neater things about this, which I love to highlight when you see it. There are new companies that are entering new corridors as far as transactions for remittances. There are new companies being built from scratch, like for instance, SendFriend utilizing XRP. It's a quote unquote brand new, and they've only been actually operating for maybe a couple months or so, something like that. They were founded over a year ago, but they've been operating for a couple months. A new remittance company taking advantage of this new technology, operating using a business model that didn't exist a few years ago. Think about that. Utility, and it cannot be done without a cryptocurrency, and the only cryptocurrency being used and even positioned for this use case is XRP. Do you not think long term more people are going to figure this out? I do. That's why I'm happy to continue investing. Declaring that the cross-border payment services these days were slow, uncertain, prone to errors, and accrue extremely high costs, he asserted that new blockchain payment technologies like Ripple's enables SMEs to invoice and receive international payments immediately in small amounts and with certainty. He also made a note of how Ripple's recent mobile app would come in handy for tourists, explaining further, quote, "Imagine if a Japanese tourist visiting Thailand could buy goods using a mobile app or QR code, triggering an immediate cross-border payment from their Japanese yen account to a Thai baht merchant's account. If more consumer purchase solutions start leveraging blockchain technology in the same way, the payoff will, quite literally, be huge." I couldn't agree with that more. So you can see what he's predicting ultimately in 2020, and it's just going to continue to expand in this path for years to follow. It's quite simply these lower dollar amount transactions, but the volume, I'm telling you, it's going to pick up. And just imagine the amount of volume that will be conducted on the XRP ledger as a result of all of this. It's all part of a tremendous ecosystem that's all being built. In conclusion, predicting that there is enormous scope for blockchain technology, he said getting Ripple to address issues of liquidity, speed of implementation, and the cost of capital would make microtransactions such as loans, payments, remittances be more efficient and transparent. Amen, brother. All right, next here, and I haven't talked about this topic in a while, so I'm going to shift gears here entirely, but this came from Cointelegraph. Facebook's Zuckerberg calls for digital community self-governance, and so that did catch my attention, and I had to read it. Plus, I hadn't been covering Libra on this channel in some time, but, okay, self-governance. What did you have to say? Well, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg said the digital world needs oversight, mentioning government regulation as a potential solution, but calling community self-governance, quote, another and perhaps even better way. And here's another quote. "One of the big questions for the next decade is, how should we govern the large new digital communities that the internet has enabled?" And that was a January 9th quote from a Facebook post. In a rather lengthy post on his social media site, Zuckerberg detailed his focus for the coming decade, singling out several topics, including digital governments, an area that also pertains to the digital ecosystem found within the crypto space. Zuckerberg pointed to social media operations, including Facebook, essentially stating that the ecosystem could not be without compromises and ideals. Like between free expression and safety, or between privacy and law enforcement, or between creating open systems and locking down data and access. And the CEO said further, quote, "It's rare that there's ever a clear right answer, and in many cases it's as important that the decisions are made in a way that feels legitimate to the community. From this perspective, I don't think private companies should be making so many important decisions that touch on fundamental democratic values." That's interesting. That's an interesting way to work, because you know what it makes me think back to is, I'll tell you, the backlash that Facebook endured thanks to their launch not of Libra, but launch of a white paper, the Libra white paper. The amount of backlash that they had to endure as a result of this, I mean, it changed things. The way in which crypto, it's just part of the history of crypto at this point. But what unfolded in 2019, I don't think Facebook was ready for that. They just that's why Brad Garlinghouse cited in a television interview that what Facebook engaged in was, quote, Silicon Valley arrogance in pushing forward with the Libra white paper, saying, hey, we're going to do this without properly going through regulatory channels, those involved of governing that anyway, just the world over. And it just set off a firestorm. And I tell you what, the aftermath of it all is still being built. So it's fascinating. Now they're talking about something, the community at large kind of figuring out the way in which this should all be governed. Interesting concept, but not exactly where they began, right? Anyway, that's it for this video. I am not a financial advisor. Do not buy or sell anything because of anything that I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo!